Welcome to the CE Pro podcast. I'm Executive Editor Arlen Schweiger. Since it first debuted 8 years ago, Snap One's OvrC software has become the go-to solution for integrators to remotely manage the devices they install in their customers' homes. OvrC saves service truck rolls and valuable time, and it's also become the basis of service plans for many integrators. So when Snap One recently debuted some changes to OvrC, it was important for CE Pro to get the scoop. Snap One's Director of Product Management, Evan Marty, gave CE Pro editor Jason Nutt the details in this week's episode. As always, be sure to subscribe to CE Pro's YouTube channel and hit that like button on our videos, or subscribe to the CE Pro podcast on Apple and Spotify and leave a review.
So there's no doubt that Snap One's OvrC product has become one of the most essential tools in the tool bag of integration companies these days. The way it connects so many products together and gives the integrator that snapshot of his business. It means fewer time-killing truck rolls. It means the potential for service agreements and other elements to the business. And a lot of that is really driven by this software entity, which is OvrC. So with me today is Evan Marty, Director of Product Management at Snap One, to talk about OvrC and some of the latest upgrades. Hey, Evan.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me. All right, let's jump right into it. So OvrC, I think most integrators are familiar with it, but I think before we talk about what's new with OvrC, maybe just give us a quick 30,000-foot view of exactly what the product suite is.
So OvrC has been around for 8 years now. It started really as a device used to, or as a platform to reboot outlets on a Wattbox. Over the 8 years, we've obviously grown and morphed quite a bit to really be more of a complete suite of troubleshooting and configuration tools for Snap One products, as well as other network attached devices. So there's two flavors of OvrC. There's OvrC Pro. OvrC Pro is an agent that runs on a Control4 controller, Arachnus and package routers, as well as the standalone OvrC hub. That device's primary purpose is to scan the entire network and tell you if devices are connected or disconnected from the network. We also have OvrC enabled devices, which is things like our Wattboxes, our access points, surveillance cameras. Those devices connect directly to the OvrC servers. They don't need an OvrC Pro agent to become useful inside of OvrC. And so if you just had a job with one Wattbox on it, you'd be able to control that outlet without any other hardware. So that's really the two flavors. And then from an interaction standpoint, there's obviously the OvrC web browser and a mobile app. Additionally, we also make an end customer facing application called OvrC Connect that allows customers to execute macros that are created and managed by the servicing dealer. So that's kind of a big picture of our entire ecosystem.
Yeah, I want to bring up something, just emphasize one point that you did make there quickly. It's not just talking about Snap One branded products, but other products from other manufacturers that are connected to the network can also have that visual element in OvrC where you can see what's going on with that product.
Yeah, it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? You have the agnostic approach of an on-premise device scanning the entire network that it's telling you things about Apple TVs or Roku devices, televisions, anything that's network attached, even computers, printers, mobile devices, all of those things, you can tell what's on the network that way. But then there's also that added flavor that really is unique to Snap One in that we have our own devices with really deep integrations and configuration that can be done on those devices, all in the same platform and the same interface.
So you mentioned how it's kind of a constantly morphing and evolving tool. I know last year I'd spoken with Kenny Kim, and we were at that time talking about some new features. Tell us what some of the new upgrades are coming from OvrC.
So in the last 12 months, we have really there's a couple things we've been focused on. First thing, what we call internally to the company is first mile issues, right? We really want to make sure that we're increasing the reliability and the robustness of the product. And with that continual morphing and growth of the platform, obviously there's things that will take a little bit of work and effort to fine tune and hone. One of our biggest accomplishments, I will say, is last September we released the change in notifications. we went back and just kind of scrapped the way that our notifications were configured before, and rewrote that process all the way from the ground up. As a result, we saw an 82% reduction in notifications. So really, we have been focused about regaining trust and making sure that the information that we're giving to our partners through the OvrC interface is accurate, up to date, and actionable. Giving bad information really doesn't do anybody any good. So we're really been focused on that. Additionally, we have recently started to see a transition from this remote management tool or remote monitoring tool to really being more operationally essential or important to our partners. So with our most recent release, there is the new dashboard. That new dashboard did nothing to promote new features or capabilities or products that are made by Snap One. It was solely designed to help our partners be more efficient and effective when they're servicing their partners. So there's simple things like having a phone number or email address, so contact information. If I pull the site, if I'm using the mobile app, I can pull up the site and click on the pin in the Google map and get directions. It opens up my Google Maps and it launches the map so I can get directions to the house. I know kind of firsthand, driving to houses or telling technicians how to get to a specific house. It was always these anecdotal things like, oh, you go past the Johnson residence and then it'll be the third house past that one. It's the blue one. And like those kind of anecdotal things really don't help people that don't know where they're going out. So this kind of removes some of that tribal knowledge that's kept in people's heads, and it brings it into the interface. On that same note, we also added linked resources. So we know that our partners have these tremendous cloud kept resources, things like proposals, CAD files, hookup documentation, pre-wire photos. All of those things are kept in their own repositories. And so one of the new things that we introduced in the dashboard is a thing called linked resources. So I can literally give you fast access to those resources inside OvrC. So now if you're sitting there looking at the Johnson residence, with one click, you can get to the pre-wire photos or the CAD files or the proposals, not having to do a context switch of a new tool and go through that navigation mechanism to drill into what you need to. Take the URL, put it in OvrC, and you can quickly traverse to the other tool and get access to those resources. So I'm really happy with the new dashboard that we've had. We've had some tremendous feedback around it. And that's just kind of the start of where we're going to really be more operationally important to our partners.
How do you see integrators when they use that dashboard? Is it a matter of coming in every day and looking at that dashboard, or is it they get alerts on the areas that they need to check for the Johnson residence or whatever the problem may be?
Well, that's kind of the realization is understanding that there's different users that dive to different depths within OvrC. I think where we were at a year ago with the customer list being down the left-hand side and the device list, we popped to the first location in the list, and we would just kind of put you right into the experience as if you were there to take a troubleshooting action on a device. And we really realized that inside of a company, there's a lot of different users that have different purposes. You have people that are trying to schedule appointments with customers for service calls. You have, finance people trying to email the customer to send them an invoice. You have sales guys that are bringing in new sales leads and starting the sales cycle, designers that are contributing proposals and documents. So really the idea of this dashboard is that it's an aggregation of contributions throughout the entire process of the site. So that's really where we're trying to go, is to say, like, that OvrC site should be created as a sales lead inside your company. And as the data is collected and gathered by the different participants in your company, the OvrC site becomes more valuable with more information. So over time, there's less repetitive data entry, that there's history of information, and really long-term, and as you get into the long-term client care, all of that information is aggregated and available at the service technician's hands to say, oh, looks like we were going to do this upgrade and it didn't happen, or I know where the wires are located here, so I can add height channel to this now Atmos room. Like, all of those things shouldn't be a rediscovery. The information should be carried from the sales cycle all the way through to long-term client care.
And in your experience, the integrators who are using OvrC, is it top to bottom access? We're talking the technicians all the way up to the CEO are interfacing with OvrC. And as you said, each one has its own purpose or use in there. Each position is going to have its own need for use of OvrC. But is it something where you need to get seat licenses for everybody on the team, or is it designed to be only for particular people? What do you see out there?
Yeah, so so that's kind of the growth of our industry and growth of the OvrC user base, is that it used to be, like I said, the guy that was going in to reboot the Wattbox outlet. Now it's like, hey, I've got all this information about the customer. How do I funnel it to my service technicians so that they're successful long term? It's really, anybody who's interacting with a project during the sales cycle, design cycle, installation cycle, programming, or service should be contributing information to OvrC over time. That's really the change in perspective of OvrC, and this is a relatively recent expectation, is that people are starting to realize how much information is aggregated. Like in my day early, we had project binders. Like, you sit at the copier and make copies of proposals, and because you had two, one for the field and one for the office. And they were always had to stay up to date. Well, that's effectively what we're trying to do here with OvrC, is to have those project binders that are up to date and accurate, regardless of who's adding information to the project. So it should be everybody in the company that's part of the process should be contributing and actively using OvrC.
Just so I can get a sense of how ubiquitous it is with on individual projects, or the depth of the project. You mentioned how it started just as a Wattbox reboot device. What is the average or the typical number of devices that are being connected to OvrC now on a per project basis?
Yeah, we've done some digging on that, in that it's really impressive. So 110 devices per location is our average today. That's about 10x what just a normal like non-smart home or IoT kind of enabled home, integrator serviced location. It's about a 10x number to that. So 110 devices per location, and they're like, some of them are getting massive, 400 or 500, 600 devices in a location. It's getting huge.
That's incredible. And I think, I've seen data at the consumer level from CTA and others that talk about the number of IoT devices in a typical home. And I think it's in the 20s and 30s. So this gives you a sense of the size of what integrators are doing and how these are so much more sophisticated systems. That's much higher than I would have ever expected. That's impressive. All right. So now you mentioned you mentioned the original purpose of OvrC. What are some of the common uses that you see integrators using OvrC for today?
Yeah, so today, really, we're getting a lot of feature requests, and you're starting to see some delivery on things around eliminating repetitive steps in setup. So, you take Wi-Fi management. So setting up access points in a house. If you've got a project that's got 6 access points in it, you used to have to go to each individual access point and set them up. I've seen some really good videos of somebody doing like 10 or 12 access points, and they had 10 tabs open in their browsers. They're bouncing from tab to tab and device to device to make sure that the channels weren't in conflict, and the antennas were, the gain was set correctly, and the bandwidth was set correctly. The SSIDs were all the same, passphrases, all of that stuff. We're starting to take this concepts like Wi-Fi management that we released last year in OvrC and deploy that more. So Wi-Fi management in OvrC says, we're going to set it once and apply to many. So how many SSIDs do you have in a project? There's 2, maybe 3 that are typical, maybe a guest network. Basically define what those parameters are once, and then apply it. And if you've got 6, 10, 1, it doesn't really matter. We'll apply those settings across all those access points. So it's really an accelerator to making our partners more efficient in configuring those devices. So we're seeing a lot of interest around doing that. Is how do I do things like even just simple things like setting time and date, setting time zone. Those are kind of some of the things that we're getting feature requests around. And then as you get outside of Wi-Fi and you start looking at other technologies, it's really that set once, apply to many, or give me a dashboard where I can see all these interconnected devices that have dependencies. Give me a view that I can easily put them into a single pane of glass instead of these multiple tabs. And in short, I guess the statement is the demand today is, how do I move away from the local UI?
Yeah, and I love it because it's having an integral part of the installation process, not just the service management, the installation. To do what you just described on the wireless access points in some sort of a universal command like that. Wow, that saves a lot of time.
Yeah, that's one of the things that OvrC, like I said, OvrC kind of has this best of both worlds, where we're not only monitoring the status of the entire network, but we're also able to get in and change configurations and update configurations all in the same login, same interface, same application. Everything is right in front of you, not only the troubleshooting tools, but really the configuration capabilities to make changes and provide corrective measures to solve the problem.
Yeah. All right, so I hinted in the outset about integrators migrating to service-based businesses more than they ever have been. And as you know from your experience, this is not a new message. Many integrators for many decades have tried to do this, but it seems to be gaining more momentum now. How can OvrC be an integrated part or an integral part of establishing a service agreements and a service-based business?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of inertia behind becoming a service-based business, really, as a lot of these companies have been in business for now decades. Their service portfolio is massive, right? The number of customers that are calling them for service, once you complete an install, very rarely are you done with that. It's basically there's an obligation or a benefit of a service customer for every completed project. And these portfolios, these service management portfolios, are growing so big that it's hard for our partners to be in all places at all time and be responsive and provide the level of service that they once did and that they expect themselves to deliver to their partners. So, obviously OvrC is the tool that allows you to what I like to say is you create a virtual presence in the house. So you can troubleshoot, you can identify problems. If there is a truck roll, to prevent truck rolls, if there is a truck roll required, you can actually be prepared with the parts, pieces, and tools that you need to be successful on that first visit. I mean, I can't tell you how many service calls I've gone on where the first one is diagnostics and discovery, and only to not have the part or need some specific thing to go back or have to repair a device, and then go back and do a repair and recovery. And unfortunately, what we could only charge for was that second trip where we're actually solving the problem. And so, really OvrC is designed and its capability is to help you solve that diagnostics and discovery problem. And you can try things like rebooting or changing configurations and things like that if it was a misconfiguration. So you might be able to do repair and recovery in that same step. And that's really where we see companies like Parasol. Parasol is one of our largest consumers of OvrC. They have an 85 to 90% success rate of first-time call resolution just by using OvrC. So we're seeing a massive success rate on companies like Parasol, where they're able to resolve customer issues just using the OvrC tool. And then if they do have to turn it back to the customer, they're able to provide, or back to the partner, they're able to provide the partner with information and all the diagnostics that they've done to that point. So when the technician gets to the site, they know where to go in the house, they know what the problem is, and they have potentially replacement parts to be successful on that first visit.
So for integrators who are listening to this or watching this, and they're either new to OvrC and are not using it, or they want to find out more about the upgrades, where should they go?
Yeah, so there's a couple places that they can go to. So from a partner perspective, they can go to snap1.com. They can even, if they're Control4, they can go to control4.com, And then really for both partner benefit and end customer benefit, we have OvrC.com, which you can actually give to your end customers to understand the value that you're delivering when you put an OvrC enabled device in their system.
All right, sounds great. Evan Marty, thanks for joining CE Pro today.
All right, thank you, Jason.
To all of our integrator and manufacturer friends, be sure to submit your top products for CE Pro's Best Awards and great projects for CE Pro's Home of the Year Awards. Find more information and all the deadlines at cepro.com.